Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. As a father of 2 young children, balancing work and home life often felt like a juggling act. My wife and I both held demanding jobs that required a lot of our time and energy. Our kids, so young, full of life and curiosity, needed care and attention that we sometimes struggled to provide without a little help. That's why we decided a sitter or nanny could be the perfect solution. We needed someone that we could trust, someone reliable to keep an eye on the kids and help manage the household task when we were both tied up or when we needed a break. And that's where Emma came in. Emma was recommended by a trusted friend of ours. We were told that she was known for her knack with kids and her responsible nature. She was in her mid-20s with an easy smile and a calm demeanor that instantly put us at ease. At first, her presence was a relief. She seemed like the perfect fit, great with the kids, always punctual, and willing to stay late when we needed her. It felt like a weight had been lifted off of our shoulders, allowing us to focus on work, knowing that our children were in capable hands. Plus, it gave us the chance to enjoy the occasional date night, a luxury that we hadn't indulged in for quite some time. For a while, everything went smoothly. Emma was so efficient, and she seemed genuinely interested in helping our family. She took the kids to their activities, helped with their homework, and even managed a few household chores. It was really comforting to know that someone was there for them when we couldn't be. We made sure to pay her well, of course. We wanted her to know that her work was appreciated. But then, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right with me. Returning home from a short work trip, I found our bedroom slightly rearranged. A photo of my wife and me was moved from its usual spot, from the bedside table, onto the top of a drawer, and it was flipped down. My clothes seemed shuffled around too. I went around the house and I saw that every single photo that had me and my wife together was flipped down. I asked my wife about it, and she said that she didn't change anything or know what I was talking about, and said that maybe it was the sitter trying to clean, and that she just forgot to put it back the way it was. So I just shrugged it off as her attempt to tidy up. Though it did leave me feeling slightly uneasy. Emma then began staying longer than necessary. Even when her duties were done, she would sit in the living room, sharing stories and asking questions that felt a bit too personal, delving into me and my wife's marriage and our future plans. I figured she was just being friendly, but my wife started feeling uneasy too, picking up on cues that I initially missed. The unease grew as Emma started asserting herself in decisions that weren't hers to make. She would buy clothes for the kids without consulting us, rearranging furniture in ways that didn't seem necessary or welcome. She began cooking meals unprompted, leaving us feeling as though our home was slowly being taken over by her influence. Even on our days off, when both my wife and I are at home to take care of our kids, she would suddenly drop by to say that she is there to help or that she forgot something. Multiple times we have told her that she didn't have to since both parents are home. She would smile, say okay, but really, her mouth is smiling, but I can definitely see something else in her eyes. It was unnerving and slightly annoying, to be honest. But it was a Saturday evening when things took a drastic turn. We were enjoying a rare quiet night at home when Emma showed up at our door again, unannounced and visibly distressed. It was really late, and my wife was immediately uneasy. She told Emma to go home and said that she wanted to enjoy a night just with the family and no one else, and no strangers, she said. I could tell that my wife was just over the whole thing and didn't care about pretenses. But Emma became upset and she said that she wanted to speak with me. So I agreed to speak with Emma in the living room, trying to maintain calm, just to get things done and over with. But the conversation with Emma quickly veered into troubling territory. She spoke about feeling like she was part of our family, that she belonged, expressing sentiments that made it clear that she had developed an unhealthy attachment to both me and the kids. She accused my wife of not appreciating me enough. Her words were laced with a dangerous mix of admiration and also delusion. My jaw was just on the floor. I did not expect this. I have not once showed Emma any interest, and I have never even been in a room with Emma without my wife. What is this woman talking about? Where is she getting these ideas? But before I could fully grasp the situation, Emma then rushed into the kitchen, and my heart raced as I followed, seeing her grab a knife. The next moments were a blur of fear and adrenaline. To summarize what happened next, she lunged towards my wife with the knife in her hands, and without thinking, I moved swiftly to restrain her, wresting the knife from her grip while my wife called the police. She looked rabid, and she kept screaming that this was her family and that my wife was taking it away from her. I actually was scared of her at that moment. Everything seemed surreal as the authorities arrived, taking control of the chaos and escorting Emma away. The realization that someone we had trusted harbored such dangerous intentions was chilling. Emma was charged and later sentenced. Her infatuation with me and her delusional belief that she could replace my wife was fully revealed. In the aftermath, we reevaluated our approach to childcare. So what we did is that we flew my wife's parents in to help manage the kids, a decision that brought immediate comfort and security. Having family nearby provided a sense of safety and peace, knowing that our children were in loving hands. Instead of paying a sitter, we offered an allowance to my in-laws for their support and efforts, which definitely strengthened our family bond. And before anyone else says anything, yes, we offered the money ourselves. They didn't ask for it. They even try to give it back. But they are great grandparents and they deserve a treat for the peace of mind that they give both me and my wife. This entire experience taught us to trust our instincts and protect the sanctity of our home life more fiercely, and to not just let any stranger come in and insert themselves in it. It's a story that I share cautiously as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes the people that we invite into our lives may not always have the best intentions. So Emma, let's never meet again. Sarah and I were best friends when we were kids. We lived close, went to the same school, and spent almost every day together. We loved riding our bikes around the neighborhood, pretending we were explorers on a big adventure. Everything seemed possible back then, and we shared everything, our dreams, secrets, and even matching friendship bracelets. But when it was time for college, things changed. Sarah got a scholarship to a big university far away, while I chose to stay home and study in a nearby college. We started drifting apart as we made new friends and got caught up in our new lives. I did try to keep in touch. I tried sending her messages and calling, but she stopped replying after a while. It was really sad. She was my best friend, but I tried to understand that maybe she had just moved on. I focused on finishing my degree and making my own friends and new experiences. And time passed, and I got a job and settled into my life. But then, 2 years after graduating, Sarah came back home. She wanted to settle in our old town again, and it was nice to see her after so long, but things felt different. We were a bit awkward around each other, like strangers trying to remember a familiar dance. Still, I gave it a chance. We had a couple of lunches, dinners, and we did hang out with each other, just trying to catch up on lost time. But it didn't take too long to realize that we were now very different people. Our interests had shifted, and our views didn't align as easily as they used to. I valued the history that we shared, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that we couldn't go back to how things used to be. I didn't want to end our current connection, of course, but I did start limiting it. Then one day while shopping, I spotted Sarah down on one of the aisles. She had changed her hair, and it looked exactly like mine, dark brown curls instead of her straight natural blonde. It was really odd, but I brushed it off thinking maybe I inspired her to change her look. I mean, who wouldn't want curls, right? But soon, there were more changes. Sarah started adopting my style. She began wearing clothes similar to mine, even buying the same brands, sometimes down to the exact outfit. Our friends noticed, jokingly calling us twins, but it felt off to me. Her social media posts started to mimic mine too. She would use similar captions, tag the same locations, and even share photos of places that I had mentioned wanting to visit. I really tried to ignore it, telling myself that it was harmless. But then, she began showing up at places that I frequented without telling me beforehand. For example, the yoga class that I attended weekly, or the cafe that I visited for my morning coffee. These all sound that they could be coincidences, but the yoga class and the cafe were all a distance away from her. There were other cafes and gyms that offered yoga classes closer to her house, but she chose the exact same ones that I go to. I felt like she was trying to fit into my world, but not in a way that felt natural or comfortable. Well, a fit may not exactly be the right word. Replace me? Maybe. I'm not sure. The most unsettling moment came when she tried to get a job at my workplace. I went into work one day and I saw her sitting in the waiting area. I asked her what she was doing there, and she said that she was waiting for her second round of interviews. It was so unexpected and somewhat disturbing. I started to wonder if she was trying to live my life instead of her own. I realized that Sarah's attempts to reconnect weren't just about rekindling an old friendship. It felt like she was trying to become me, or at least mold herself to match the life that I had built. It was both flattering and alarming. But I had had enough, and I made a decision to confront her about it. So I sent her a text and asked her if we could meet that coming Saturday for lunch, and she replied yes. Saturday came, and I met up with Sarah in a little restaurant in our area. I decided to talk to her, just gently explaining my feelings and the need for us to remain friends without losing our individual identities. It was a really tough conversation, but it was necessary. I hoped that she would understand and just find her own path, just as I had found mine. Sarah broke down. She cried, and she explained that she didn't really have a good university life. She was mixed in with a horrible friend group, but she was too ashamed to reconnect with me online after she ignored me. So she thought that she would toughen it out and maybe things would change. But it didn't. So after 2 years, she decided to come back home. She said that when she saw me living confidently and happily, she felt a wave of jealousy overtake her, and that she wanted to have what I also have, and that's how she ended up stalking me and copying me. She apologized profusely and said that she would stop. I did feel bad for her, and I told her that I forgave her, but I did suggest for her to see a therapist because maybe that would help her, and she agreed. To make the long story short, it has been a year after that confrontation. She did see a therapist and looks like she's doing well. She did continue working in the company that I work in, but we are in different departments. We see each other from time to time, and we still talk and are still friends. I think therapy is really helping her, since I feel like I see glimpses of her old self back. So yeah, that's the story of my old best friend turned stalker turned friend again. I'm sorry if this is not as scary as the other stories on here, but this is by far the weirdest experience that I have ever had. So this happened 3 years ago. I was 24 and I was living alone in a one-room apartment in the city where I had graduated. I rented this apartment because my uncle lived in the same building and he helped me find a place with a decent rent. My uncle was well known and liked in the building. There were over 90 apartments and he seemed to get along with everyone. Barely 7 months after I moved in, I woke up to a friend request on Facebook from a guy that I didn't know. However, I noticed that he was friends with my uncle, so I figured that he must be a neighbor or someone from the building. I saw that he was close to my age and thought, why not? So I accepted it. I really didn't think much of it afterward. But then he started messaging me, saying that he was my neighbor and that he knew my uncle and whatnot. I was polite and I responded within a reasonable amount of time, even though I wasn't particularly really interested in having a conversation. I thought that it would be rude to ignore a neighbor, especially since my uncle was so known in the building. At this point, I already suspected that my uncle was trying to set me up with this guy. I was single and the neighbor was close to my age. My uncle was the type that always asked, "Do you have a boyfriend or are you still single?" As if it was any of his goddamn business. My uncle knew everyone in the building, and this guy was the only one that sent me a friend request and seemed eager to talk to me, so I had a strong feeling that my uncle was behind it. Anyway, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't interested, but I remained polite as long as he didn't cross any boundaries. After all, we were neighbors, and I wanted to maintain that as civil as possible. But what annoyed me more though was when one day my uncle came over and then asked me to help him with something on his Facebook account. He wasn't tech savvy, and yeah, we lived in the same building. I often helped him with these things. I logged into his Facebook and immediately a chat window popped up. It was a message from that guy. It was the only message in the chat, as if the rest had been deleted. It seemed like a text that was part of an already ongoing conversation. Though I don't remember the exact text, the message's main idea was that he needed my uncle's help, followed by a laughing emoji. At this point, I was pretty annoyed because I was sure that my uncle had said something to him about me. I started replying to his messages less frequently as I wasn't interested in any kind of romantic fling anyway. I was just being polite and I never led him on. Eventually, the texts became less frequent and I assumed that he had given up, so I moved on and I forgot about it. Then one day, after finishing work, I worked remotely. I decided to go get some groceries. The moment that I opened my door, a pack of chocolates fell to the ground. They were somehow placed on my doorknob, and I was so confused. Why was there chocolate at my doorstep? At that time, I didn't immediately suspect him. There was no note left. I simply picked up the chocolates and I placed them somewhere in my room. A few days later, yet another gift. A small potted flower. This time, however, it was really creepy because there was a note glued to the pot. It read, "I saw you and I like you," with a smile face emoji at the end. Now, imagine this. A young woman in her 20s, living alone, receiving anonymous gifts with notes that say, "I saw you." That's hella scary for me. I don't know who this person is, and they casually mentioned that on a note glued to a pot. At this point, I became paranoid and I started thinking about who it could be. Lo and behold, my neighbor texted me. It suddenly all made sense. It had to be him. This had already crossed every boundary. However, I was scared to confront him directly because I didn't know how he would react. This guy was massive. I'm pretty tall myself at 5'9", but he is about 6'1" and was way more muscular than me, and he had a big dog. Plus, he knew exactly where I lived. So, I decided not to address it right away. Instead, I waited to see if he would somehow give himself away in his messages. A week passed, and I was still paranoid. I bought pepper spray. I started listening closely to footsteps near my door, trying to figure out if he was coming by again. But nothing happened. I wasn't sure if it had stopped, but I started to feel slightly better. Then one day, I went to check my mailbox. Inside, I found a bunch of small notes and poems. Some of them read, "I hoped you liked the chocolate. I would love to know if you liked it. You are so charming." The poems were strange. Each one was 4 lines long, and it had a romantic tone. I couldn't tell if they were his, but they all expressed different ideas regarding love. The weirdest part? Each note was dated. For example, one was labeled November 1st, 2021, and I had one every day of the month. That meant that the person had been leaving them consistently. I also realized that the same day that I got the chocolates, I had received a note about it, only that I didn't check my mailbox on that day. At this point, I had had enough. I confronted the guy over text, and he completely denied everything. He said that he liked me and my style and just wanted to get to know me. He acted offended, asking why I would accuse him of something like that. And no matter what proof I provided, he denied it all. At one point, I even started to gaslight myself thinking, what if it really wasn't him? What if I was just being mean for no reason? And I felt guilty. But then, after I called him out, everything stopped. The gifts, the notes, the poems, nothing. And the guy never texted me again. I don't have definitive proof that it was him, but come on, the timing was way too much of a coincidence. The moment that I confronted him, all of it stopped, and I think it's pretty obvious. 3 years later, I still live in the same building. He usually just says hi when we pass by, and that's it. I do feel safe now, and I haven't been bothered again. Oh, and my uncle moved out. So yeah, happy ending, I guess. Hi, let's just say that my name is Jen. I don't want anyone tracing this story back to me. I'm a female and I'm 26. I want to share a disturbing experience that I have in hopes that it will help me feel a bit lighter inside. Feel free to let me know about what you think or if you have any similar experiences. Everything at my work seemed pretty straightforward. I was just another employee trying to make my way up the ladder. I was focused on doing my best and hoping that it would lead me to something bigger. My team was generally supportive, and while the workplace has its usual ups and downs, it did feel like a good environment. I know, it sounds very vague, but again, I don't want this to be traced back to me, so I'm sorry for that. Everything at work was doing fine until it wasn't. A guy named Mark happened. Let's just call him that. He joined a few months after I did. Maybe 5 to 6 months, I'm not sure. But at first, it seemed like we made a good team. We worked on a couple of projects together and everything went smoothly. I thought we had a decent professional rapport. Though we didn't socialize much outside of work, it was all business, and that was fine with me. But things started to change though when I got a promotion. It wasn't a big leap, just a small pay increase with a small title that, to be honest, really didn't mean much to the company. But for me, it was a step forward, and I was thrilled. It meant a lot more responsibility though, but also recognition for my hard work. I didn't think much of it until I noticed Mark's behavior starting to shift. He started becoming more distant, his attitude changed, and it seemed like he was avoiding me in meetings and during some task. If we ever did get to speak with each other, he always had a scowl on his face, or he would give snarky comments. At first, I brushed it off, figuring that he was just dealing with his own issues. But then, small unsettling things began happening at work. Documents that I needed would go missing, files would be improperly organized, and tasks that I'd never seen before would just show up on my schedule as overdue. It was all minor, but the frequency of these issues made them hard to ignore. I then started to hear whispers from coworkers mentioning things that painted me in a less than flattering light. Rumors about me taking credit for other people's work or being difficult to cooperate with. It was like a wave of negativity washed over the workplace without any warning, and I was at the center of it. I just couldn't understand what was going on and why this was happening to me. But I had a strong feeling that someone was trying to sabotage me. Trying to pinpoint the source was tricky though, but my gut told me that Mark was involved. I caught glimpses of him watching me. It was that feeling you get when someone's eyes are on you, even though they try to hide it. The few interactions that we had were tense, and there was an edge to his words, a subtle undercurrent of resentment. The situation at work grew strained, and I found myself second-guessing everything, constantly on edge, fearing another misstep would fuel the whisper campaign further. My productivity slipped, and I began to dread heading into the office, worrying over what fresh chaos awaited me. I was seriously feeling miserable. One day, I stayed late in the office, hoping to catch up on some work and maybe uncover who was behind the issues. As the office emptied, I noticed Mark still at his desk, his eyes flickering over to my cubicle every so often. I could feel the tension in the air. I decided to approach him, but as he saw that I was coming, he stood up and then went to the toilet. I still decided to go to his desk and wait for him, and as I made my way over, I noticed a stack of papers on his desk, and some were bearing my name. They were the missing documents, which were the cause of so many of my recent headaches. The realization hit me hard. He was really the one behind the sabotage, trying to make my professional life difficult, chipping away at my reputation. It wasn't just competition anymore. It felt deeply personal. The full weight of his actions settled over me, and I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. I was determined not to let it slide this time. I documented everything that I could. I took photos of the files on his desk, and I made sure that it was showing that it was on his work area. Luckily, the office is full of cameras, and I thought that I could also use that to my advantage too. I also compiled a record of the disruptions and their effects on my work. I reached out to HR, presenting my findings calmly and clearly. It really wasn't about revenge, but about preserving my career and my peace of mind. The process wasn't easy, and it took time for everything to unravel. Eventually, after some investigation, the truth emerged, and Mark's actions were addressed formally. I don't know what drove him to such lengths though, envy, insecurity, or something else entirely. He was called in by HR and he spent around half a day with them. And when he came back, he had this defeated look on his face, and he did not even look at me at all. As much as I wanted for Mark to get fired, mean, I know, but he was not fired. I was just told that he was written up and given a stern warning that if he does it again, he will be removed from the company. I do think that that gave him a wake-up call to not try something else. After that, my work slowly returned to normal, the gossip slowly ceased, and I haven't had missing files or documents, though I did still remain vigilant all throughout. Mark and I would sometimes be in the same elevator or in the break room, but I would just pretend that he didn't exist, and it made things so much easier for me. Back in August of 2021, I was a freshman at Queens College, which is in New York City. I am currently a senior, and I will graduate in the spring with a degree in film studies. For your information, I live in Chicago, and I only go home during week-long breaks. Well, backtracking from where I first started, orientation day came and I had butterflies in my stomach. I wasn't too sure if I would fit in or make any friends there. I thought maybe I was just overthinking it. And during orientation day, I met up with all the kids in my major, and they all seemed like approachable peers. Only this one guy, though, caught my attention more than the rest of them. His name was Dylan. I could tell when we first met that he was a very weird guy, and he was also pretty cringy. He said the most random things and he would try to make others laugh, but he failed too. He probably was just a huge film and television nerd and just had that kind of personality. Sadly, I wish that this was the case, but it wasn't. Days, or should I say weeks, went by, and this Dylan kid would get more annoying each day. He would keep saying the most random things out of the blue. I don't know what his deal was, but I just wanted him to shut up for once. But there were also some positive things that had happened though. For instance, about every freshman, including me, who was studying film studies, all formed into a friend group. But Dylan was also in it. We didn't really invite him to join, as he pretty much just invited himself in. Nobody in the friend group really saw him as a friend, and we all pretty much just tolerated him. He kept getting on everyone's nerves, as he was just spewing nonsense that only he wanted to talk about. One night, I met up with 3 friends in the friend group for dinner at the college's cafeteria. Their names are Alex and Eric, who were men, and Mary Kate, who is a woman. We talked about a few topics at the table. One topic that was talked about was Dylan. We all complained about how we couldn't stand him and his weird creature-like behavior. But when Mary Kate spoke, she said something about Dylan that sent shivers down my spine. She informed us that he had been following girls around campus to their rooms. She also said that the majority of the students in the college think that Dylan is a psychopath. They probably think this because the girls who Dylan had followed probably told other people, and it was most likely spread around the campus. My ears just couldn't believe what it was hearing. The days kept passing by, and Dylan was still being his usual oddball self. One day at lunch, he sat down at the table where we were sitting because there was an open chair. I let out a small sigh and I muttered under my breath, "Here we go again." He sat down and then started to babble on and on about how people were giving him creeped out looks. I wonder why. I said this to him in my head. Believe it or not, he was still talking about stuff that sounded like personal problems. We just all ignored him and his goofiness. But then out of nowhere, he then asked us in a firm tone, "Why are you all acting like children and ignoring me?" This reached the boiling point for me. I decided that I have had enough of this idiot and I will have the balls to tell him off. I don't know how I did it, but I snapped and then I said to him, "Listen, I don't know what you want from us, but none of us want to talk to you. And I think you know why. You're so annoying. You butt into our conversations and then bring up random topics that are not even being talked about. Do you also ever just shut the hell up? Like, seriously, dude. Just leave us the hell alone and fuck off." I did not predict what he would do next, but that's a given. I saw him get up from his chair, which was 2 seats away from me, and then rushed at me and then grabbed his hands around my neck, and I felt myself starting to choke. He then said to me in an angry and loud voice, "What is wrong with your tiny human brain?" I heard the whole cafeteria go silent and slightly saw everyone's faces looking at me as I was grasping and breathing for air. This happened for only 5 seconds until I felt the grip of his hands release from my neck as I saw about 5 to 6 men pull him off of me and hold him down at the table right next to the one that we were sitting at. I heard one of the guys say to him, "You are not going anywhere until we get security to escort you out." The pain in my neck was really kicking in at that moment. My friends Peter and Mark came over to me and asked me if I was all right. I told them that we needed to report this to the Dean of Students. We walked over to the Dean's office, and as we were walking, we saw a security guard officer running into the cafeteria. Some faculty member must have rang him over. We got to the office, and we saw that she was typing something on her computer. She probably wasn't busy, but I knocked on the door anyway. She opened the door and we saw her eyes open wide, like she had just seen a ghost. I could tell that she wanted to say a bunch of curse words, but she kept her cool and asked all 3 of us what happened. I simply told her that I got assaulted. We then saw her shake her head and said, "Oh, dear Lord," as she was walking toward her mini refrigerator on the floor. She opened it up, and we saw her take something out of the freezer part. There were 2 ice packs, and she handed them to me, and then I thanked her because she was really kind. Next, she told us to have a seat and to give us a report about it. I told her everything that she had to know, and Peter and Mark being my witnesses. After that, we went over to the security control room, and as we walked in, we saw 2 guards working behind the CCTV, reviewing the surveillance footage of the moment Dylan started choking me, and then when the guys who were sitting at a different table got him off of me and then restrained him on a table. The dean then asked the guards who were across the room, "So you guys already know what happened?" And one of the guards replied back with, "Yes, we saw everything unfold through the camera footage." We were in that room for some time, And after we finished, the dean told me that she will keep me notified about Dylan and if he gets suspended or something. I then thanked her for her time, and I went back to my dorm room for the rest of the day. The next morning, I woke up and checked my school email like I always do. It's the first thing that I do when I wake up. I then saw that I had a new unread email from Dylan. I sighed and I said, "Oh no." I opened it up, and the subject was simply put as apology letter, and it read out, "Hey, I just wanted to say how truly sorry I am for what I did to you. I went too far and I let my emotions get the best of me. Do you want to be friends again?" I was intrigued reading this, but not in a good way. I can tell that his apology was not genuine because who would ask someone if they wanted to be friends again in an apology letter? I decided right then and there that I will not respond back to his email. There was also no way in hell that I would forgive him. The rest of the day went on, and quite a bit of people would come up to me and ask if I was okay. I told them that I was better than yesterday, and my neck is in less pain. I also was wearing some bandages on where my marks were. Having a lot of people coming up to me and asking questions about yesterday did stress me out a little bit, but on the bright side, they did seem very caring. A few days went by, and then one day, I got an email from the Dean of Students, and the email was about how Dylan had been expelled from this college for his actions. I was really happy to hear this. The administration definitely did a superb job of handling this, and it also seeked closure for me. I want to say that this is where the story ends, but unfortunately, it doesn't, and it gets even scarier. It was still the same year, and it was now Thanksgiving break. I went back home to Chicago, and one night at around 9:30 or 10, I was in my bedroom, and I suddenly heard a knock at my window. This was extremely unusual. Never in my life have I ever gotten a knock at my window, and even worse, it was beyond inappropriate at this time of night. I was really nosy to see who it was. I walked to the window, pulled the shade up, and who I saw made me feel like I needed to leave this country. It was none other than Dylan, and as soon as I saw him, I pulled the shades down and I ran to get my parents. I saw them sitting in the living room, and I told them in a very fast speed of voice what I just saw and who I saw. They didn't seem to believe me, but my mother said that she will check with me. We got back to the room and then went to the window. I stood right next to my mother when she pulled up the shade. Dylan was gone and nowhere in sight. She told me, "You see? Look, nothing is there. You're probably just paranoid, and I get that." And I said back to her, "Yeah, you're probably right. It might just be my mind playing tricks on me." She then walked out of the room and then shut the door. I kept thinking that whole night that if it was really him, or was I just hearing or seeing things? Or if it was real, how was he able to get all the way to Chicago if he lived in New York? Which he told all of the film students, by the way. It just didn't seem right at all. I had a very hard time going to sleep that night and the days following. And to this day, I still wonder if it was really Dylan outside of my window, or was it my brain just messing with me? You guys can be the judge. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister, Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.